Hi, this is Dorothy with Scrapbooking, and I have had a time with this video. This is like a week coming to you. Anyway, this is Holly and Ivy Cardmaking Workshop, and I'm showing you the 4 designs, and that is the stamp and thin cut set that comes with the workshop kit, and those also come the gold glitter gems. The greenish blue pieces are the thin cuts. And so the special procedure that we're doing with this is not really a special procedure. The technique is heat embossing using gold embossing powder. So I pulled out some gold embossing powder. Embossing powder lasts forever. So this is really old embossing powder that I'm going to use with this. Those pieces are all of the die cuts. So I've done all of the cutting and most of the die cutting prior to this. And as I cut, I put things into envelopes marked 1, 2, 3, and 4 to go along with each card project. So the one piece of the die cutting that I haven't done is to take the foreground for card 1, and I will be using the Christmas tree die cut, and I will be placing it on that foreground piece and cutting out a Christmas tree, and then I will put the green background paper behind it, and you could put some space in between there with some foam dots if you want to add some dimension. I'm using my wonderful thin cut, the die cut and embossing machine. I love that it has the different settings for 3D embossing and 2D letterpress and die cutting, and it has tension. So sometimes you get a die cut or an embossing, a thin cut or an embossing folder that needs a little more or a little less. And this allows you to do that, which I absolutely love. So there's the little bow and the ornament thin cut that comes with this kit. So here's my Christmas tree, and I'm putting it cut side down. And I'm going 1 7/8 inches up from the bottom and 3/4 of an inch over from the side. So that is now centered. So there's 3/4 of an inch on either side of the widest base of the tree. I'm putting a little piece of washi there, even though I've got my new magnetic mat. Because of the precise nature of the cutting, I'm just wanting to hold my thin cut in place. So I can't wait to just use the magnetic without having to be so absolutely precise, but this one calls for that. So I'm just running it through, forward and back. Probably once is enough. And there's my cut, and I'm just being gentle, taking the washi off so I don't mar the surface of my cardstock. So there's the first one. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the second one. I'm doing 2 each of these cards. I kind of wish I had just done 1 each because it ended up being a long video, which is why I've speeded it up 200%. These 2, the 8 cards altogether took me about maybe almost 2 hours to make, and there's 16 cards. So you make 4 each of 4 designs. The card base and the envelopes come with. So I'm just showing you when you lift up the little base part, there are open areas where you can store washi tape, and also that handle comes off and sets in there, and then you pull them out and lift them up, and you've got a nice compact little machine that can fit into a nice little corner, a little nook. So there's my second base. And that will go on top of a card base. So that is what that's going to look like. Now, if you wanted to add some dimension here, what you would do is put the foam dots on the corners of your little green sheet there, and that would lift it up. But I'm going to go ahead and put it close with Tombow tape. So I'm just kind of determining just exactly where it goes. And I'm nudging it because there's a little teeny corner, which would get covered up by the bow, by the way. But I was trying to be precise. So the layouts of the cards are pretty simple, but there's a number of pieces with each of the designs. And so we have this, the candy stripe is the opposite side of the green holly paper. And so those pieces are going to get attached to the white card stock of the design element of this card. So there are the two inks I'm using for these cards are my intense black ink and also evergreen. So the colors, the red and green colors, are evergreen and candy apple red. And so I'm using the intense black to go on my bow. And I'm doing two. So you're kind of getting a double dose of each of the cards. Like I said, this ended up being a long video, and to tell you the truth, I had to go out and get a new terabyte drive because this video ended up being so big my computer couldn't handle it. So I'm having to move stuff off of my computer and put it on this big drive. Who knew? I mean, I've had this done for days now, many days. So there goes my candy stripe, the thicker piece, which is I think 3/4 of an inch, goes on the very bottom. I'm putting it right up to the very edge of the white cardstock. And then the 1/4 of an inch piece, which is 4 inches long, is going across the top. So this whole part here will fit on the card so that there's about a, let me think, an 1/8 of an inch going all around that foreground of the card. So you get two kind of candy striped stamps on the stamp set. And one is thicker, one's thinner. So that's what I was showing you. So I'm adding just a little pop-up foam piece on the back of my bow. And then I'm going to add some glitter gems. That's going to go on the bow, and then there we go. The smaller gem goes on the bow. And then we're using, there's four sentiments, like 'Tis the Season, Merry Christmas, Peace and Joy, and Deck the Halls. Those are the sentiments that are with this stamp set. And so we're using Peace and Joy for this one. And I am snugging it up to the base of the tree because I still have an evergreen strip that goes underneath that. So there's my Peace and Joy. So now these stamp sets, to tell you the truth, full disclosure here, I've already done the first two sets, and I've had a time with this video. I don't know why my head was wacky. I was shooting those gems all over the room. I could not control them. I made all sorts of boo-boos, and normally I like to show them, but there was so many that it just became confusing. And so these are the last two. Now here's the other stamp pad is Versamark. So the Versamark is kind of the glue that holds the embossing powders in place. The embossing powders are kind of like little teensy little micro beads. And so you need a glue to hold them in place. And I almost forgot to use my anti-static pouch. You want to use the anti-static pouch when you're doing heat embossing because those little beads are very much full of static and they kind of stick everywhere. And so you end up with little speckles of whatever color of embossing powder you're using. They end up all over the place. So it's a little hard to see what you're doing here. So what I'm doing is I'm putting one in the center of the strip, and then I'm kind of halving the space between the center and the end, and then one on each end. And I'm kind of leaving it like that because if I start putting too many, they're going to get way too crowded. So anyway, the first step is the Versamark. The second step is getting your little tray or a coffee filter, whatever, to kind of catch all the powder so you can put it back in your jar. So there's my gold. And like I said, it lasts for so many years because it just only takes a little bit of the embossing powder to catch on to the glue and then make, melt and make a real pretty little design. So what you don't want to do is touch the area that has the glue on it and the embossing beads with your finger, because you will wipe it off at this stage. So I'm setting my tray full of the gold powder far away so I don't have it just, that's the other thing I did. I had embossing powder all over the place. So my heating gun is taking a little while to heat up because it cooled down overnight. So it's just going to take a little while. But you go from dull, where you can't really see anything, and then this is what's the fun part. Look at that. It just comes alive. I mean, it's just so much fun to just kind of watch that happen. So, and you want to make sure sometimes you can see dull spots and you don't know whether you need to heat it more. So there we go. There we go. So you can really see that the little beads have melted. So it's just really, it really is kind of fun. See the difference between the kind of dull look, and now the heating gun is already heated up, so this one's going to happen faster. And so that's the other reason why this video took so long, is because I was doing double the amount of embossing on here that needed to be done. But this way you get to see the technique, get a good feel for it if you haven't done heat embossing before. So you'll need tweezers because that heating element gets hot. I mean, it gets hot. So you see that little dull spot? Yeah, those were beads that weren't melted. So there we go. I mean, I have been remiss on occasion and left, some things didn't fully get melted. And it dries very quickly. When it's all been melted, then it dries very quickly. And see, at this stage of the game, if you wanted to add some more of the little poinsettias in between, you could certainly do that. But I'm okay. So there we go. So here's my card base. You fold towards the sticky outy part of the scored area, just so you know. So I went ahead and already put the one base down on the card. That's why there's a little 1/8 of an inch around the design element. I'm showing you that I'm lifting it up with some foam tape. So I'm going over the background paper for the Christmas tree just to make sure that it doesn't go flying out. I'm pulling the background paper off, or backing paper is. And then I'm just giving an 1/8 of an inch all around. So there we go, and it has a little bit of dimension to it. So the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm putting Merry Christmas, and I'm using the Evergreen because I absolutely love the color of this ink. It's just the perfect Christmas green. And this is where I get more complicated than you need to be. You don't have to do this, but I like to put a little design element on the back of my cards where you would see the hallmark mark. And I'm just putting, this is one that we didn't really use on this card, but it's adorable. It's one of those little bells. So I've also used the little poinsettia, which is really cute too. So I like both the bell and the poinsettia. So there's the first card. Now I'm just putting, when I put the inks away, it's because I've gotten in trouble with messing up the backs of cards by brushing it over the open ink pad. So I'm trying to be careful. Now I'll tell you that I cut things wrong here. The stripes ended up being vertical instead of horizontal. But don't tell anybody, because I don't really see a big deal difference between it being horizontal or vertical. So I am putting the candy apple red cardstock, the dark side, on top of the dark side of the evergreen. And then that is going to kind of be offset on the signature Holly and Ivy paper. So now on this one, we're going to make the little bows to go on top of the ornaments. They're going to be done in the gold embossing also. So I'm putting Versamark there. And, pardon me, the, kind of putting them upside down so they'll pick up some of the embossing beads. So I'm using my anti-static pouch, getting rid of the static, and then using this background that's a very Christmassy background. And I'm going to put all of that all over the, excuse me, the ornament. So I'm looking for my little pad. There we go. Okay, so you can see that there's sort of straight lines on the edge of the ornaments. And so I am using that as a go-by to put the design. The design is made up of little leaves. It's made up of little bows. I think there's some bells in there, some poinsettias. So there's lots of different Christmassy elements in there. Holly leaves. So we're going to put those in the tray, being careful to not touch any place where there's the glue, the Versamark. And I'm going to go ahead and put a whole bunch more gold beads. And at the very end, then I'll put the gold embossing powders back in the jar. And it's like you've hardly used anything. So I'm just kind of shaking around and tapping it off, making sure that all the different glue areas are covered, completely covered in the embossing powders. So there we go. And there's my bow, and there's my second bow. Gotta be careful. I had some extraneous stuff on there that, and then some places didn't get too much. So, okay, so now we're gonna do the heating gun again. So you get to see the heat embossing over and over. Each card has a certain amount of embossing on it. So this is a lot of embossing. I mean, usually we might have a couple of elements of embossing, but, you know, for the Christmas, you want to have a lot of glitz, right? So, look at how it, oh, I just love to watch it melt. So it just really makes some pretty elements on your card. It just makes them shiny and sparkly, and you know, that's what you want for Christmas, right? So you want to make sure that all the little beads are melted. And so, yeah, I've got his embossing powders all over the place, I'm telling you. So I'm going to put Merry Christmas on this one. And it has it, on the card it has it in black. But I told you that I like the evergreen. I mean, that is like, you know, so black doesn't have to be black. So just one side gets a little banner cut. If you have a banner punch, great. Use it because, you can. I've been known to cut my finger doing that. Okay, so there is kind of an up and down side of the element of the, what do you call that thing? The ornament. That's see what happens when the beads get all over it. They just stick to everything. So that's why you use the anti-static pouch. So I'm raising the ornament up a little bit because it makes sense to have some dimension on an ornament, right? So the pointier side goes down, or the long pointy side goes down. So it's kind of hard to see, but there's definitely a longer part. And then I'm going to add another little foam dot, and that's where the little bow goes. So cute, right? And then this just kind of, like I said, it kind of gets offset onto the signature paper, the Holly and Ivy signature paper. And then I'm sticking that to the candy stripe background with just a little bit of red and white showing on each edge. So, and then I'm putting Tombow all over it. Now this one gets 1/4 of an inch all around. And then I'm adding a little bit more dimension to this card with the sentiment showing. And so that is going to go down at the bottom, and we were going to try to keep these gems in line. So I'm kind of holding it down with one finger. And if you slide it, then the glue backing, well, there's kind of a, told you that they get out of control. I had one in my hair too. If you slide it, then the glue backing of the glitter dot will come with the glitter dot. Sometimes if you just pull it up, the glue backing is left on the carrier sheet. So I slide it so that everything comes up the way it's supposed to. So I'm just showing a little bit on the left-hand side, and then a little bit shows on the right-hand side. And so I'm going to go ahead and add my foam tape. You could use foam dots too if you wanted to. I seem to go through a lot of foam dots, so I decided to use the tape here. So, and you end up with these pretty cards. So I'm going to be very happy sending out these Christmas cards. So far, I will have 16 made with this stamp set. And then the next thing I'll be showing you is, on my next video, is the Santa for card making. He is absolutely a beautiful traditional Santa, and I'm experimenting with him right now. So I've made one with markers, and then I'm going to make one. So there's, you can see that there's a convex side and a concave side. So you fold towards the part that sticks out, which is not really intuitive in my way of thinking. So you want the sticky outy part on the inside of the card. So there we go. There are my second card projects. And so then I'm going to finish. And normally I wouldn't have to show you what goes on the inside, what I put on the inside. But I'm just going to show you that, these are, sentiments are mix and match. So I put Merry Christmas on the outside and Peace and Joy on the inside. You could put 'Tis the Season. You could put Deck the Halls. But they definitely are mix and match kind of sentiments. Or you could leave the inside totally empty and write Christmas letters on the inside of your card. Whichever you're inclined to do. So I usually do a little Christmas letter, nothing too boring, I try not to brag. Should be so, but, I don't like to write read braggy letters, but I do like to be somewhat informative so people that maybe I don't stay in touch with all year kind of know what's going on in my life. So I have a whole bunch of green strips for some reason. I've got 2, these are probably like 1.25 inches or 1.5 inches. Don't remember how wide they were with the instructions, and then probably maybe half-inch ones. So we're going to have, first we're going to do Versamark, and we're going to make our trees. It pretty well covers it. I think it does it fine. You know, sometimes I get a little wacky and I want to fill up every little corner, so that's why I did that. But unnecessary. It's you just have to maneuver the stamp so that you kind of get your best coverage. So I'm just trying to see, okay, there's my, now I'm going to put my little Christmas trees in there, and then I'm going to take the same stamp and put it in my evergreen. And I'm using the light side of the evergreen paper here. And then I'm doing a tone on tone and stamping the evergreen onto the light side of evergreen. So that's what, so you have kind of the repeated pattern on the tree and on that green strip. So there I'm getting some good coverage, giving it a good shake. You don't want the things to overlap because you sure don't want them to, you know, mess up your glue and your embossing powder. So these are going to be really pretty, this Christmas tree. See, so you've got bows and holly and pine cones and holly berries on there. So there's all sorts of pretty Christmas elements. I love that bell. See, and when the heating element stays warm, then it doesn't take long at all for the embossing powders to start melting. So that really helps as far as time. So I'm just giving a good coverage. That one area, I wonder if that one area doesn't look really done. Let me see if I pick up on that. We'll see. Okay, so I'm folding towards the sticky outy part, if you remember. Now this is going directly on the card, and you're leaving about 1/8 inch at the bottom. And then we put the dark thin strip and the lighter stamped set. Now I tell you, I messed up a card, so that's why there's some white cardstock on the back of that green piece. Okay, and so the thicker candy striper goes at the top at 1/8 inch, and then I've got to do some stamping. And so I think I'm doing Deck the Halls on this one and the thin stripe. So what you want to do is have the part that you're stamping as close to you as possible so that you can kind of see what you're doing. If you're doing it too far away, it's hard to see clear on white. And so I just did a little masking there. So I'm turning the card around so I can see better. And it's a little hard to space these elements so that they're, you know, touching. So sometimes there's a little bit of space in between because you can't really, you're either not going to make it totally spaced correctly or it's going to be overlapping. So I'm just kind of doing the best I can with it. And I'm going to go ahead and, so I don't mess up my glue. Now I could have done the stamping with the black Deck the Halls first. That would have been fine. I got some glue on there, so I'm trying to get it off and taking off the excess gold. So, it's not absolutely perfect, but it's good enough. I mean, once it gets real shiny, all you kind of look at is the shiny and not worry so much about life's little imperfections. So now we've got the beads are all melted, and maybe not as good as I want them to be. Yeah, you want to make sure that they're all melted, otherwise they'll wipe off. So now we're going to put Deck the Halls, I believe. So if you want your stamp, now these are real thin stamps, so it's easy for them to get a little curve to them. So if you just put it down on your tabletop, your whatever you're working on, and then pick it up with your block, then you will get, the stamp will snap into place and not be distorted in any way. So I'm going to give a little boost to the tree. It's going to have a little elevation to it. So I'm adding some of my foam tape. And I'm just centering it so that it a little overhangs the dark evergreen at the top and then comes a little bit above. And then I add my bow that's inked with the intense black. And of course that's going to get popped up with the little dots. So there we go. And then a small glitter right in the center of the bow, because that goes perfectly with it. And then we're going to put some glitter gems here and there. Okay, so I got ink all over. I got some green ink all over, and that's how my one card got messed up, is that I had ink all over the place, and it just totally got on the back and on the front of the card. And my hands are inky enough, causing its own problems. But there goes my little bells. So on our stamps, when you're making cards, you're going to find that there's always an element that you can use of the stamp set to add a little decorative thing. Or we also have stamps that said homemade by me, or homemade, and then you add your name or your initials. See, I've got ink all over the place. And we're going to start all over again because I'll get another. I've got to go clean up. There we go. Okay, try that again. Sometimes you need to take a break and just clean up your area and your hands. So, I forgot what I was saying. Anyway, I know, because there's always an element that you can use to decorate the back of your card if you are so inclined to do that. I also use it to decorate the envelope, and I really, really like doing that because that's kind of a thing people don't like. People are kind of getting I've seen more envelopes over and over again that have decorations on the front of the envelope. And so I kind of give it as a little preview of what's to come on the inside. And so I'm going over my area, the stamping area and the embossing area, with my anti-static. And then I use my Versamark with the little candy cane stripes. So this is a really good, once again I'm masking, just to keep it in the, along the line of the candy stripe paper. So you're getting a good handle on embossing when you are doing this much embossing. So Yeah, that's not going to work until you put the powder on it. Getting ahead of myself. So this card, the Holly and Ivy card set, is available until October 31st. So you still have plenty of time to make cards and get them sent out before any kind of Christmas insanity hits. And I would suggest that you get your card set as soon as possible. Like I said, you have until the end of this seasonal book, which is October 31st. And then if you put an order in on the 22nd, then you will get a new catalog for November, December. They will put that in your box for free. So I'm adding dimension with my tree. So it's getting centered, going a little bit below the dark green, the evergreen, and a little bit above the red zip strip. So we just have one more to go, I believe. One more design. So what I'd like to say is that you can make these homemade cards, and there's all the instructions. There is the paper that you need. You need adhesive and some either foam strips or foam dots. And you need to have a cutting tool to be able to cut the paper. And if now you could do all stamping in the evergreen if you wanted to, or red, if you didn't want to get the embossing powder and the heating element. I mean, it's not too expensive and it lasts forever. My heating element is probably at least 15 years old, and you don't have to get every new one that comes along. So I've got some ink up there in the white, so I will cover it up at some point because that was just supposed to be left white. But you could just use colored ink and not necessarily do embossing. But the embossing is something that I guarantee you, once you do it, it becomes addictive. But we've got time now. All of the papers are all color coordinated. The inks are coordinated with the cardstock that are coordinated with the papers. And you don't have to do a whole lot of thinking. Everything is right here for you, and the design is set for you. So, you end up making these things that you're really proud of. See, this is an example of how you don't have to do gold embossing. You can just use ink to decorate your pieces. So the die cutter is available in our annual catalog now. And so I believe it's $119. That will be used with any of your die cuts, which is so many things are now have the die cuts or the thin cuts that you'll be using it a lot, all the time, for scrapbooking and card making. So I got a little close there so you can't tell. What you don't want to do on those thin, really thin lined stamps is squish them down too hard, because then you won't get the really sharp line. And that's kind of what I was showing. One I squished down too hard, and the other one I just did it gently. So you got a nice sharp line. So I'm doing the banner cut here, and I didn't really do it the right way, to tell you the truth. So what you want to do when you have a matching banner like this is, I'll show you as soon as I finish with this cut. So that's not bad, but it's not perfect. So I'll show you a better way of doing it. You know, a really good way is if you have the the little press that makes those banner cuts, then you got it. But I do it by hand, and so it's easy to not be perfect. So I get a little bit better here. But I'll show you how you can make them identical. Okay, so now if you put it down to the bottom, you make the things even. You do the cut up the center, and then the cut to the center from the very corner. And then you scooch it up a little bit. Then you get a perfectly matching element. Ta-da. So, and this one, this is simple because all I'm doing is using the little striped piece, and I am just making the little string that hangs the ornament. And so now all of my little, that's the last of my gold powder that I'm going to be using. So I put it all back. And I still have over half a jar left after. The gold embossing powder is probably 15 years old too. It's as old as the heating element. So like I said, it's one of those, look at how nice that one did. Boom. Oh, okay. See how fun that is. That's just, I love doing that. I love the embossing. So there we go. And just putting those two pieces in place, and the red is going to go on top of the green, the evergreen, with just a little bit showing all around, about 1/8 of an inch maybe. And so same thing here. And what a nice little background to put the ornament on. It's just so, just makes the ornament stick out. And I'm going a little bit into the striped piece for the ornament background. And so with that long pointy end going down towards the bottom. And so I'm scooching it up just a little bit. Now this one gets banner cuts at both ends. And that's going to go down at the bottom. We're going to do a couple of the gems here and there that goes shooting off, who knows where. And a small one. So there's that. And I used that red zip strip on top to cover up the ink that I got, had on my hands and got on the card. So now I'm just using doing it again. Yeah, getting glue and ink, and I don't think that's ink. I think that's just glue. So I can take care of that. Put my little 1/4 of an inch 4 1/4 piece going along the top of the holly and ivy. And then the red and green banner is going there. And then my ornament. Oh, I decided to put this one flat. And then add the foam strip to the sentiment to add some dimension. So however you want to add dimension, or if you don't want to, you don't have to. So then I add my gems, and we're almost finished here. You know, enemy, I mean, good is the enemy of, perfect is the enemy of good. I'm just trying to fill in some little spaces that happen to be there, and it's like, okay, that's all right, you know. Okay, so now the other thing, I need to put my bows in place. And of course, I'm going to pop them up with my dots. And another. And I kind of have to put, you kind of have to put a little gem right there in the center of the bow. And so you can see the difference. Now that was just glue, and so I'm taking it off with my special handy dandy eraser. So there's the difference between the white on top and the red on top. So the next thing is adding the sentiment on the inside. So it's 'tis the season, so what am I putting? You always want to make sure that you take the extra ink off. If you get ink on your block, Merry Christmas. When you get ink on your block, you want to make sure and wipe it off, because that smudge will end up on your card. Believe me. I'll guarantee it. So you want to always kind of watch out and make sure that your block is cleaned off before you see. What I'm doing right now is I'm trying to find, I decided I wanted the poinsettia, but I can't find the poinsettia. And because I'm getting kind of tired here, you see how I recovered on that? That's the benefits of clear stamps and clear blocks, is you can kind of go over if there's a little ink that's missing. So the last thing you want to do is get your little micro cloth and clean off all your stamps and put them back on your carrier sheet, because I have not very many, but I have lost a couple of little tiny elements that when I didn't put them back right away, they get lost. And then you feel really bad because that's just the element that you want. Well, I can't find my poinsettia right now. So I'm putting everything back. I'm showing you, you want to clean them off first and then put them back on your carrier sheet. And it doesn't matter that there's some dye. Sometimes the stamps get dyed, especially from black ink, and they'll turn kind of pinkish. That has no effect whatsoever on the effectiveness of the stamp. So it's simply just kind of dyeing the staining, not dyeing, but staining the stamp, and no effect whatsoever. And so you want to, I'm just kind of cleaning up my surface here. And then I'm going to lay out the cards and show you the one last thing that I wanted to do was to get my envelopes, all 16 of them, and make a little bitty cluster to stamp in the corner. And so what I wanted to do was, I had a whole bunch of green strips left. I think I must have cut twice as many as I needed. I wanted the bell and the little poinsettia and the bow to be the cluster on the envelope, so that it would show elements from the cards, kind of like a preview of what's going to be coming on the inside. There's my handy dandy microtip scissors with the Teflon coating. That's the mat, the close to my heart mat. The top side there is for laying out. It's got markings down to 1/4 inch. There's my envelopes. And on the flip side of that mat is foam. And so what I should have done was had that flipped over and used it to do all of my stamping, because it's just a wonderful background. Now I finally found my little poinsettia. And so I'm going to go ahead and take my evergreen. And so there's my little element, but I'm going to move. I don't like the way the bell is kind of far off. So I'm going to move it a little bit closer, and I'm happier with that. So here we go. See, just a little bit of something on the front of the card. And sometimes, sometimes the elements are big. I mean, sometimes it's a big butterfly. Sometimes it's a lacy edge. I mean, it's depending on what the stamp is. And so, like I said, there's always some element of your stamp set that you're using that you can use to decorate your envelopes. And, be liberal with your decoration. It's fun. So there's my stamping of my envelopes. There's my microcloth. All of those, believe it or not, I wash that with soap and water, and the staining, just like the stamps, does, it still works perfectly. I'm putting my stamp set and my thin cuts back in the envelope, so if I want to use it some more, I've got everything all together. So here we go. Here are the cards from, see, there's the foam backing on the mat. It's a wonderful have-to-have tool. And that's a self-healing cutting board, which I'm sure you've heard of those. So here are the cards I did today. So I've got this whole set is all done now. And there's the intense black and the evergreen, and there's my envelope. So I think these cards came out real pretty. There's a lot of interest in the cards. There's a lot of pieces. Wrong way, Dorothy. There's a lot of pieces to each of the cards, but it's not burdensome, but lots of interest. So there we go. Intense black, evergreen, and my envelope. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and please sign up for my YouTube channel. I appreciate it. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. Bye now.